Viewed from a distance, our world seems quiet, peaceful, eternal, unchanging. Up close, it often presents a maelstrom of hope and despair, promise and poverty, with dreams of a better life set against the cruel realities facing the countless millions who struggle, generation after generation, to maintain a basic subsistence, while the fruits of civilization and human progress are enjoyed by relatively few. With the rise of modern science, astonishing powers have been unleashed into the world. Powers that have revolutionized industry, transformed agriculture, and assisted humanity to cross frontiers scarcely imaginable just a generation ago. Science has empowered humankind to dare to dream of the impossible and to make it so. Cannot then the same scientific knowledge and collective will that produced the atom bomb and placed a man on the moon also be used to eliminate the crushing burden of poverty, provide universal education, and develop the tremendous capacities latent in the entire human species? For more than 5 decades, India, with one of the world's largest and most diverse populations, has been a primary center of the activity and thinking that has come to be known as development. India's development efforts, which have taken place in a global context, involve specialists, government, scholars, international agencies, and the growing organizations of civil society. As experience has grown, development thinking has become more sophisticated. In the early years, development thinking focused upon modernization, which was equated with industrialization and the transfer of technology.
Those days it was just providing drinking water. And the feeling was, if you provide drinking water, and later if you provide water for irrigation, then more crops can be grown, the people can get a lot more income, and they would be economically empowered.
There were notable success stories. The Green Revolution raised food production. The White Revolution expanded the production and availability of dairy products, provided increased income and better nutrition for millions. Despite this progress, the desired prosperity has not materialized, and serious concerns remain.
I think there are too many imbalances. It's not to say there weren't any before, but there are too many imbalances between those who have and those who don't.
Even after so many years of independence, the gap is becoming bigger. The poor perhaps are becoming poorer, and the rich are perhaps becoming richer.
However well-intentioned, development activities to date have often not only failed to meet the material needs of the poor, but created other problems as well.
Now, post-World War II phenomena of development created an artificial schism or divide between such traditional religious and cultural trends and tendencies on the one hand, and more modern technocratic approaches to development, where external technology, external resources, external projects were supposed to transform people's lives.
This schism runs deep. It is rooted in basic contradictions in our conceptions of human nature, conceptions deeply ingrained in 20th century thought and practice. On the one hand, we dream of and labor for a world of justice, peace, and prosperity, while on the other, we give uncritical assent to the notion that human beings are by nature selfish and aggressive.
This is a fundamentally wrong assumption. People have lost faith in the capacity of man to behave in a moral way, and that has to be modified. This is where religion with a big R comes in, to teach us that man has the potential to be transformed. There are many examples of transformation that have happened through people abiding by the religious teachings, and that can be sustained and can be a collective process.
All across India, those who have struggled with the challenges of development have increasingly come to recognize that something vital is missing from the technical and materialistic orientation that has dominated the past 50 years of development thinking.
If you're looking at poverty alleviation, say for instance, and if you're looking at poor, you are looking at nutrition, you are looking at at incomes, you're looking at housing, you're looking at water, you're not looking at what sustains them.
Somewhere along the way, maybe we've lost values to some extent, or lost the relationship of values to the material benefits. Our measuring tools have changed. We're measuring, at one level we're measuring profit without defining what profit is in terms of human beings. On another level we're measuring efficiency, again without measuring benefit. We're measuring development through cost-effective indicators. For example, is it cost-effective to save the life of a disabled child in a poor community? I don't know, but I would think it is.
Development is going only in one direction, and that is towards the economic growth. And they think that development is really only materialistic development. Whereas the challenge is that they have found that economic growth in itself, or the GDP and other indicators of the development, are no more sufficient to prove that a country is really developed.
Among both scholars and practitioners, there is a growing recognition that there is an important spiritual dimension to the development process.
Without a spiritual dimension to the development work, the sustainability becomes very difficult. To sustain the motivation and commitment is extremely difficult only if we have a professional approach.
Dedication is a very important element. Mere technology or physical presence of the manpower is not adequate. We should have dedicated people. Dedication has a very close linkage with spirituality.
In India, religion and culture play a major role in people's life. They are the major determinants in every way.
Land, forest, water, historically these have been part of people's spirituality. In the Indian tradition, water is a source of life, and unless you understand it spiritually, merely saying save water is not going to make any difference. It will only make a difference in people's understanding and action if they link the spiritual dimension of water as a source of life, air as a source of life, tree as a part of your extended family. Now those are spiritual notions, and they cannot be only understood as instrumental rationality.
And we can't think about that spiritual development is development and its other development is other development. It should be interlinked. If we mix sugar in the milk, we can't see it's so separate. It's a sweet milk. Like that, it's a spiritual development should be in the practice in our life.
Science and religion, the two great systems of knowledge and understanding that together have been primarily responsible for the progress of civilization, are fused together in many of the greatest expressions of the human spirit. In art and architecture, in literature and law, in customs and patterns of community life. However, the consequences of distorting the proper interplay between these two powerful forces needs to be recognized.
I want to give you the example of the restriction put on women through, even though it is not prescribed by religious practices or religious guidelines, but it was just the distortion which was brought in. So a woman should not laugh loudly, she should not open her hair and stand on the gate of the house. She should not, when she is menstruating, she should not touch the food. She's impure human being. She should not visit the God. She doesn't have a choice of her own about her clothes, about her likes and dislikes, about food. She's prescribed what she should eat. So I think that unless that is understood clearly and completely rejected by the society as such and by the people who have any kind of faith, and restore women's dignity, this distortion has led to a lot of crime and violence inflicted, which has been inflicted till today in Indian society on women. Same way, science. I mean, I don't need to describe much about that, because I think we all know that when distortions come, you use the same nuclear medicine to help the most disastrous disease, and the same nuclear technology to finish the whole human race and perhaps everything. that is around today. So I think the science has a very major role in correcting the religious distortions, and spirituality and faith has a very major role in correcting distortions in science.
So science, like religion, can produce useful or harmful results.
When I say what kind of science are you talking about and what kind of technology are you talking about, for whom does the science and technology matter and whose technology are you talking about? Unfortunately, if you see that science and technology make the powerful people more powerful, and that's really a problem.
Today we have seeds which come into the country, big organizations, multinational organizations coming into the country, providing us seeds from which we can get bumper production. But then those seeds cannot be reused again. We've got to go back to buy these seeds. It goes on and on and on. So I think we've got to stop somewhere and make science useful to the people and not useful to the community, which is really strong enough in developing this particular science in some country or other.
Many a times you find that technology transfer takes place without having a proper understanding of science behind it. And that's why you keep on using the same technology without even understanding why it is really working in this way. And that's very dangerous.
If scientific and technological innovations are not to be destructive of delicately balanced ecosystems and lifeways, it is necessary to nurture a scientific culture within the local community.
They worship sun, and now instead of teaching the science, telling that worship is bad or it's superstition, our method of teaching is that the same reverence, it is the same solar energy which the plants photosynthesize that energy, and that's metabolized in the body, and that's the same energy we get. So there's nothing wrong in feeling reverence for sun. So I think the science can be taught, which is the way which doesn't alienate them from their own spirituality. So that type of approach, bringing science and spirituality together, is possible. They are not contradictory. Of course, the science in the sense of the purer forms of science, not the technology which is alienating us from the nature.
True development involves advancing the scientific and technological culture of peoples in harmony with their spiritual aspirations. This requires some redefinition of science. At the same time, expanding the discourse on development in this way cannot take place without a corresponding redefinition of the concepts and practice of religion.
It's not surprising that religion should be absent from the process, because the commonly understood view of religion, I would say religion with a small r, is of dogmatic, paternalistic, dominant religion, which is a set of beliefs and practices that in many parts of the world have lost touch with the original spiritual message that came through.
In India we have many festivals in the villages. And people come together, but it becomes such a ritual thing that the spirituality is lost. And it is the spirituality that we have got to capture in some form, and along with whatever development processes that are taking place. If this goes side by side, we would perhaps find that there is total development.
The conception of religion, which can function in dynamic coherence with science, is not a religious practice absorbed in debates over contending theological doctrines, but rather a practice of religion wherein service to others is elevated to the station of worship.
कई लोग तो पूजा करते हैं भगवान की.
A lot of people will worship God.
लेकिन सिर्फ ये चार दीवारों के अंदर एक मंदिर.
But sitting inside a temple.
वो मूर्त.
With a statue and its worship.
Church.
And a church.
गुरुद्वारा.
Or a gurudwara. We worship in these places.
लेकिन spiritual हमारा आध्यात्मिक भावना जो ये कहता है.
But our spiritual development says.
कि गांव एक मंदिर है.
That the village is the temple.
राष्ट्र एक मंदिर है.
The country is the temple.
उसमें बसी हुई जनता ये सर्वेश्वर है.
The people living in this country.
और जनता की सेवा ये भगवान की पूजा है.
And the service to those people is the worship of God.
Your own faith must make you a human being first of all. I think the center of religion to me is humanization. If my religion doesn't going to help make others and me a human being, I think that is not religion. It's very simple. I am not a big philosopher, but a simple thinker to say that my religion, if I'm a Christian, you know, if I follow a particular faith, it should make me first human, you know, and then in the whole process, I should also make others human. It's built on the principle of love, justice, peace. I think this is a principle, you know, embedded in all religion. I think we must make these religions, make all the religions for people's development.
The dynamic integration of scientific and spiritual principles for development is finding expression in the arts, music, literature, and drama. Integration of science and religion in a coherent, holistic framework eventually calls into question prevailing materialistic theories that place economic activity at the very center of social existence.
I don't really believe that economics alone can change the way people live. The change has to come from inside. It has to be a change that is holistic. It has to be a change of the mind, but the mind doesn't work without the spirit, and the spirit doesn't work without belief, and the belief doesn't work without the outer parameters of society. So it has to go from inside out, and then economics becomes just one of the things that facilitates it.
The expansion of the development discourse by itself cannot solve all the problems of the poor. The alleviation of poverty still must depend upon the material resources that already exist or can be created through science and technology. These are tremendously complex processes, progress is slow, and long-term consequences, positive or negative, are often not immediately discernible.
Empowerment doesn't happen in 1 year or 2 year project. We have to view empowerment in a generational sense. And many people lose heart because the process seems so slow and so tortuous. But we have learned that it is bound to be so, and shortcuts are not available.
The most important breakthroughs in human understanding, those that create whole new paradigms, have identifiable qualities. In place of a narrow focus on problem solving within an existing theoretical framework, revolutions in thought are generated by articulating new ways of looking at problems. It's often a new way of looking at the fundamental nature of the problem which yields new solutions. Exploration of the nexus of science and religion generates a new and powerful set of principles and directions in development thinking that go far beyond the limitations of the materialist paradigm. For example, from the materialistic perspective, the poor tend to be viewed, first of all, as a bundle of needs crying to be met with resources that are always too few.
I many times say that if poor were as poor as we think them to be, they'd be dead long time ago. The reason they are not dead, they survive, is because they have much more resources than we think they have. And it's not only material resources, not the money resources. It's the social resources, the cultural resources, they are intellectual resources, and more than anything else, they are spiritual resources.
From this perspective, the task is to unlock those resources in a systematic way to build capacity at the individual, community, and institutional levels.
The purpose of capacity building is not to transfer knowledge from outside to inside or from experts to people, but to enable them to learn, and in the process of learning use their own capacities, their own potential, but also acquire appropriate knowledge and skills and attitudes and perspectives.
There's now tremendous emphasis on assisting the poor to develop their own institutions, their own NGOs, their own ways of dealing collectively with their problems.
So the idea is really to see if we can make villagers more self-reliant and at the same time interface with the bigger world and draw on whatever resources and skills that are beneficial to them in the outside world.
Capacity building, participation, and empowerment have little meaning if more than half of the population are excluded from their benefits. Thus, the establishment of full gender equality must of necessity assume a central place on any development agenda.
If the nation is poor, the women are poorer, and thereby the children are much, much more left out and ignored, and their health is not cared for, their education is not cared for. And as a result, the whole society is paralyzed to some extent. And when you launch a development program, whether it is health, education, employment, training, capacity building, if women are left out, it doesn't take off.
I think it should be a kind of a movement, a spiritual movement where families need to be involved. To treat another human being equally is a very difficult question, because precisely, though religion says that all human beings are, equal, no human being treat another human being equally, because everybody wants to be superior than other one. To be equal with someone, to treat men and women equally, I think it's a character and a value, it's a kind of a very deep level of, faith.
The true basis of gender equality lies in spiritual principle. The rational soul has no sex. Implementation of this principle has profound implications for the transformation of society.
The whole culture of violence, which has which creates terror in the minds of people in society at large, puts people against people. Guns are all over, whether it is Indian society or whether it is a developed society, US or whatever, wherever. And man beating the woman, the child getting terrorized in the family, to society getting terrorized. This whole culture of violence is very patriarchal. And I would think that because of the power, concentration of power for such a long time in the hands of the patriarchy, that when it will change, when it will break down, and there is a new ideology will emerge, and is emerging already, which is of interdependence, which is of caring and sharing, which is also of creating new human values.
All over the world, we see a great awakening to the crucial role of women in the development process. Even in remote tribal villages, women now have their own organizations and meetings to assist each other. Their songs speak of their empowerment and appeal for more just treatment within the family. Men, too, are beginning to recognize that the education and emancipation of their women brings good things to their lives and the lives of their villages.
And in practical applications, they start thinking that, what do I do in my family with my sisters and my mother, and even in my neighbor, the women, how do I treat them? Or do I give them opportunity? Do I help them to come up or progress like me?
As women participate more fully in the affairs of society, they're beginning to transform the very nature and conceptions of governance, of power and authority.
If the oppressed are given a right kind of education and, a concept of how do you use the power, I think there will be a great change. I think women are going to be the great change agents in the world, not only in India. I think I'm saying that even globally.
The struggle is to look at the total developmental paradigm and total developmental target and goals and change that. The systems will have to be changed.
I would think when we talk about a value system, what is important is egalitarianism, that we are all members of one human family. Now, this is to me a very important area of development. Intimately connected with it is the whole question of, when I say human community, the earth belongs to all of us. Nobody has a right to steal or rob this, because we are members of one human family. And that is why earth must be shared. It cannot be in some way plundered. It cannot be looted. It cannot be in some way destroyed for the sake of the benefit of a few.
I think when we look at the last century, we see that the two trends. One trend is where the human nature has created destruction. whether it is through the weapon or it is through the development paradigms, that nature has been destroyed, flora and fauna has been destroyed. Also people, human life has been destroyed through the use of weapon and war. Peace has been destroyed. But when we look at the other trend is of spirituality, of the sanity, of the rationality of human being. I think when we look at that other trend, I feel that's where my optimism lies.
I think the signs of hope are linked to the recognition that we are in this world together. Religion cannot survive unless the inequalities in society are addressed, and inequality in society cannot be addressed without linking it up to spirituality. The rich and the poor are acknowledging, if not publicly speaking, about a common destiny, and I think that acknowledgement today is a reality.
It may not be possible, maybe in my lifetime, to see what we are thinking of, but perhaps maybe in another 50 years, 100 years, we would perhaps find societies which can share what they have with the others and be content with what it is, and build new communities based on love and sharing.